Well, let's talk about all this. Eddie Goldenberg was Prime Minister Chrétien's Chief of Staff, nowadays Senior Advisor for Global Public Affairs. Mr. Goldenberg, always good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Great to be with you.
Listen, we have to begin with U.S. trade because here we are right now in this midst of a 30-day pause from the Trump tariffs announced earlier this week. And now Donald Trump is talking about dairy and lumber once again. But, you know, Ottawa, in response to the reprieve, did not respond in kind. Was that a tactical error now that Donald Trump is talking dairy?
Well, no, I don't think it was a tactical error yesterday to say that yesterday, the government was very clear that it would postpone the second part of the Canadian retaliatory tariffs, but it would not lift the first $30 billion. And that was the right thing to do. He's totally unpredictable. And I think the government has been doing a very good job. I think the government has the support of the Canadian people. It has the support of the provinces. And it's acting the best way it can, dealing with somebody who is totally irrational.
But did it miss a chance of showing goodwill by responding in kind to what we heard from the Trump administration?
Oh, goodwill to Donald Trump? He'll take that, put it in his pocket, and ask for something else. Okay. I think it would have been totally wrong to do anything other than what they did yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Well,
the only way they can show goodwill is when he takes the tariffs off altogether.
Yeah, and that is what we're hearing from the Ontario Premier. He says, for example, the 25% export tax that's going to be put on energy, electricity to the U.S. states will only be lifted once they start renegotiating a CUSMA. But, you know, come Sunday, your party, the Liberal Party, will have a new leader. The country will have a new Prime Minister. When it comes to ending this trade war, I do wonder what you think job one needs to be. Should it be a phone call to the U.S. President to try to reset the Canada-U.S. relationships? Because, you know, it seems part of this it has to do with how Donald Trump feels about Justin Trudeau on a personal level.
I think that the new Prime Minister will want to have conversations with leaders around the world. I think a phone call to the President of Mexico would be very important. I think probably a phone call to the President of Panama would be important. I think a phone call to the President of Denmark would be important. Talking to the head of the European Union would be important. I think he will have to talk to President Trump, but I don't think we should expect that we will get anything from President Trump just because there's a new Prime Minister in Canada. I think the only thing we will get from President Trump is when Americans put pressure on the administration that the tariffs and the economic policy of President Trump are hurting American workers and American families. It's not going to come from Canada.
So it seems to be you're implying that in addition to that really what Canada needs to do is building alliances and relationships beyond the United States. Am I hearing you correctly there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The Canada-U.S. relationship that lasted for 150 years or whatever since Confederation was broken last week by President Trump. Whether it can be repaired, I hope it can. But I can't imagine that it can really be repaired as long as he is president of the United States, because you can't trust him. You can't trust him. His word one day is changed the next day, or in a tweet at 3 o'clock in the morning.
But what about beyond Mr. Trump? Is this just a matter of wait and see, or is the suggestion you're making here is that it's better for Canada tactically to not rely on the U.S. so heavily going forward?
Look, I don't think we can rely as heavily going forward. We're still going to rely on the United States. It's the world's largest economy, and it's our next door neighbor, and it's easier clearly to do trade with the United States than to do it overseas. But I think that it's really important to diversify our trade. I think the one thing that Trump has done he's done a couple of things for us. One, he has unified the country. It's never been as united. And two, he has demonstrated to us that we need to diversify our supply chains. We need to diversify our trade. We have to do more in Asia. We have to do more in Europe. And we have to do a lot in the United States, but not as much as we've been doing. And I think that's what it's going to be like going forward. And frankly, what he has demonstrated not only to Canada, but to his allies and old enemies in the world, is he's totally untrustworthy. you have no idea where he is going to come from. He's a bully, and I hate to say it, but it's a little bit like mafia. It's a protection racket that he's running, and you don't deal with the mafia by giving them a little bit and expecting them to say thank you.
Now, we spoke a little bit about a new leader for your party, and I do wonder, and I hear what you're saying about building relationships beyond the United States, how to proceed with Donald Trump. But when it comes to proceeding with Canadians, I wonder, once a new leader is chosen, once a new Prime Minister is named, is it better for that person to keep the same PMO, the same cabinet, or is it better to have a fresh start to signal to Canadians that the change is real and not just cosmetic?
Well, I think you've asked two questions. A new prime minister, I believe, should have a new PMO. Doesn't mean he has to get rid of everybody. There may be some people in the communication shop or the advanced shop that he would want to keep, but I think he would want to have his own staff. There's no doubt about that he should have a new PMO. If he wants to keep a couple of people for a few weeks, that's fine. But I think he should have a new PMO. As for cabinet, the new leader has a decision to make. He has to either he or she will take basically the existing cabinet, call it a caretaker, and say that they will make a fundamental change after the election if they win, or make some changes, next week. And we'll see. That's a choice, and that's a choice that the new leader has. The two leading candidates have obviously been thinking about, and we'll see what they do next week.
Yeah, and also. And a part of the discussion will also be a transition of power. How quickly do you think that has to happen?
I think it has to happen pretty quickly. I think what's going to happen is that the new leader will talk with Mr. Trudeau either Sunday night or probably Monday morning. Mr. Trudeau will say to him, "When are you going to be ready?" And he or she will say when they think that they will be ready, and it's probably be a few days. So I would think that the transition would be sometime during next week. But with the strong possibility of an election being called pretty quickly, the new Prime Minister would want to be in place pretty quickly, I would think.
Okay. Now, when you and I last spoke, you said you were supporting Chrystia Freeland. It looks like Mark Carney is now the perceived front-runner. What do you make of that choice if it is, in fact, Mark Carney who becomes the next Liberal leader?
I think he would be he'd be a terrific leader. I think Chrystia Freeland would be a terrific leader. I think the two of them far outshine anything that Poilievre will put in the window. And I think that he or Freeland will be able to show Canadians not only that they can stand up to Trump better than anybody else, as well as the fact that they understand the economy and what's going to be necessary to manage a very different economy.
Although Mr. Poilievre is asking some very pointed questions about Mr. Carney's business past, calling him loophole Carney now.
Mr. Poilievre was giving coffee to people who were carrying a Canadian flag upside down in protest. Now he's starting to wrap himself in the flag. He's looking for slogans. I don't think it's going to get him anywhere. I think he must be panicking because he's now probably sees himself as having a very good chance of losing the election. I think that nobody has had better public service and private sector career than Mark Carney, and nobody can suggest that Mark Carney is anything but fully capable of being Prime Minister and fully honest. I wouldn't put. There's Poilievre talking about what do people think in the country that he's an elitist. He's when Poilievre lives in the government mansion, he goes to work in a chauffeured car, and he suggests he really knows what other people think. I mean, I don't have much use for the rhetoric of Poilievre, but I know that what Poilievre is going through now must be very tough on him because he thought he was going to win. Now he realizes he has a very good chance of losing.
Eddie Goldenberg, I always appreciate the time. Thank you for this.
Thank you very much, Michael.